Gather around, dear listeners, as the shadows lengthen and the night whispers secrets through the wind. Imagine yourself by a flickering campfire, or perhaps huddled under the covers with only the glow of your screen for company. Tonight, on Shard the Teller, we delve into one of the most haunting tales from the annals of Russian history and war folklore. A story that has chilled spines for centuries, echoing across lands, bloods, and the collective memory of generations. This is the legend of Rasputin, the man history could not kill. Part 1. The boy who should have died. In the frozen heart of Siberia, where the land stretches endlessly and silence feels alive, a boy was born who was never meant to survive. The village of Pokrovskoye was small, isolated, and harsh, the kind of place where winter decided who lived and who vanished. It was here, in 1869, that Grigori Yefimovich Rasputin entered the world. From the beginning, something was wrong. Midwives later whispered that the child did not cry immediately, that his eyes opened too early, that he stared, not wildly, not confused, but with a calm that made grown women step back from the cradle. An old neighbor would later say, in a trembling voice, that when she looked into the infant's eyes, she felt as though she was being measured. Rasputin was not a healthy child. He suffered violent fevers. He collapsed without warning. At least twice, villagers believed he had died, only for him to begin breathing again hours later. His father, a rough and practical man, once said quietly that he stopped mourning Rasputin before the boy was 10 because death seemed to circle him constantly, yet never take him. Even as a child, Rasputin was feared. Animals reacted strangely around him. Horses refused to approach. Dogs growled without cause. Chickens went silent when he entered a yard. Other children avoided him, claiming he could see through walls or hear sins. One boy later swore that Rasputin had described a secret theft the boy had committed, something no one else could have known. When confronted, Rasputin simply stared and said, in a flat, emotionless voice, "God already told me." Religion in Siberia was harsh and unforgiving, filled with fear of judgment and obsession with sin. But Rasputin's relationship with God was different. He did not fear God. He spoke of him as something intimate, immediate, watching. Once, after being beaten by villagers who accused him of stealing, Rasputin rose from the snow and calmly said that their anger pleased God more than their prayers. That sentence alone earned him lifelong suspicion. As Rasputin grew older, his behavior became more disturbing. He drank heavily. He disappeared for days. He spoke in riddles. He stared too long. He laughed at inappropriate moments. And yet, people came to him. When livestock fell ill, Rasputin was summoned. When women suffered strange pains, he was consulted. When men were plagued by nightmares, they sat with him in silence. Some claimed he healed them. Others said he merely told them things they had never admitted aloud, and afterward, their suffering eased. The local priest warned the village to stay away from him. But even the priest admitted, years later, that Rasputin unnerved him. He recalled one confession where Rasputin leaned forward and calmly described the priest's sins before the priest could speak. When the priest demanded how he knew, Rasputin replied softly, "I listen when others sleep." In his 20s, Rasputin vanished. No one knows exactly where he went. Some claim he wandered Siberia as a pilgrim. Others say he lived among forbidden religious sects that practiced ecstatic rituals and deliberate sin to reach enlightenment. There are rumors he visited monasteries that officially did not exist. When he returned months later, he was changed. Thinner, quieter, his eyes darker, his presence heavier. Villagers said it felt like the air tightened when he entered a room. He spoke now with certainty. Not confidence, certainty. He claimed to have seen visions. He said God spoke not in words, but in impulses, in urges, in darkness. He preached that salvation came not from purity, but from understanding sin completely. This belief horrified church authorities, yet it attracted followers. By the time Rasputin left Siberia and began his journey towards St. Petersburg, he carried a reputation that preceded him. Some called him a holy man. Others called him possessed. A few said something worse, that he was protected. In the capital, whispers spread quickly. This unwashed peasant from the frozen edge of the world had entered aristocratic circles, not through education, not through status, but through influence. He spoke softly. He touched people briefly, and afterward, they changed. The most dangerous rumor, however, was this: that Rasputin could not be killed, not because he avoided danger, but because danger avoided him. And soon, fate would test that belief. Repeatedly, violently, publicly. By the time Rasputin reached St. Petersburg, the city was already decaying beneath its gold. The Russian Empire looked powerful from the outside. Marble palaces, uniformed guards, glittering halls. But beneath the surface, it was sick. The royal family was isolated, terrified, and increasingly desperate. Rumors of revolution crept through the streets like a fever. Faith in the church was thinning. Faith in the crown was worse. And then Rasputin arrived. He did not enter the city like a prophet. He entered like a shadow, uninvited, unannounced, unremarkable to look at, until he spoke. Those who first encountered him in the capital later struggled to describe why they listened. He was filthy. His beard was tangled. His clothes smelled of sweat and travel. Yet when he fixed his gaze on someone, conversation slowed. People forgot what they had been about to say. One noblewoman later recalled that when Rasputin looked at her, it felt as though her thoughts were being rearranged. She said, quietly, that she felt naked without having removed a single garment. Rasputin spoke not of doctrine, but of inevitability. He did not say, "God wills this." He said, "This is already happening." That distinction mattered. Word of him spread through the city's religious underground. Mystics, visionaries, and those who believed the official church had lost its connection to the divine. Soon, Rasputin was invited into salons and private chambers, where candles burned low and conversations were whispered. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, it was always directly to the fear someone carried. Not general comfort. Personal. Precise. Then the rumors reached the palace. At first, they were dismissed. The Tsar had no interest in peasants pretending to be holy men. The court was filled with imposters already. But the Tsarina was different. Alexandra Fyodorovna was deeply religious, deeply anxious, and deeply alone. And she was hiding something. Her son, the heir to the throne, was dying. Alexei Romanov suffered from hemophilia, a disease that caused unstoppable bleeding. A simple bruise could become fatal. Doctors could do nothing. Every night carried the possibility that the future of the empire would bleed out quietly in a child's bedroom. The Tsarina prayed obsessively. She begged God for a sign. What arrived instead was Rasputin. When Rasputin was first brought before her, witnesses say he did not bow. He did not flatter. He looked at the boy, and he went very still. After a long silence, Rasputin said in a low, steady voice that the child would not die. Not that night. Doctors were offended. Guards were furious. But Alexandra clung to the words. Because that night, the bleeding stopped. Doctors attempted explanations. Coincidence. Rest. Reduced stress. But it happened again. And again. Whenever Rasputin was near, or even when he sent letters, the boy's condition stabilized. One physician admitted years later, his voice shaking, that he had no medical explanation. He said it felt like the illness was being held back. Rasputin became indispensable and dangerous. With the Tsarina's trust came influence. He advised her on political appointments, on dismissals, on enemies, and he warned her, repeatedly, that if he were ever killed, the royal family would not survive him by long. She believed him, and history would later suggest she was right. But Rasputin's power did not go unnoticed, nor was it welcomed. The nobility despised him. The church denounced him. Politicians plotted. Rumors exploded through St. Petersburg that he seduced women at night and prayed by day, that he drank until collapse and rose untouched, that he spoke of God while embracing sin, that he knew secrets whispered only in confession, and the most disturbing rumor of all, that he knew when people were going to die. Several nobles later claimed Rasputin had warned them of accidents days before they occurred. One man laughed in his face. 3 days later, he fell down a staircase and broke his neck. Another mocked him openly. Weeks later, she was found dead in her bath, officially ruled a fainting spell. The pattern unsettled even skeptics. Attempts were made to discredit him. Investigations opened. Nothing stuck. Witnesses recanted. Documents vanished. Those who spoke too loudly found themselves reassigned, disgraced, or socially erased. And then came the decision that would seal Rasputin's legend forever. They would kill him, quietly, permanently. A group of aristocrats lured Rasputin to a palace under the pretense of a private meeting. They poisoned his food. Enough poison, later estimated, to kill several men. Witnesses said Rasputin ate calmly, drank wine, laughed, waited. Nothing happened. Panicking, one conspirator shot him point blank. Rasputin fell. They believed it was over. Then he stood up. What followed defied every expectation. Rasputin attacked, screamed, fled into the frozen night, blood pouring from his body. He was shot again and again, beaten, finally bound and thrown into a river. When his body was recovered, the autopsy revealed something chilling. He had not drowned. Water was not found in his lungs, which meant he may have still been alive when thrown into the river. One examiner later admitted, in a barely audible voice, that Rasputin appeared to have fought death until the final moment. Within months of Rasputin's death, the Romanov dynasty collapsed. The Tsar abdicated. The royal family was imprisoned, and eventually executed, just as Rasputin had warned. But the story does not end there, because death did not end Rasputin's influence. It only changed its shape. People claimed to see him in dreams, in mirrors, in moments of crisis. Letters surfaced, some genuine, others disputed, containing warnings that seemed to predict the chaos of the coming century. And then there were the rumors that refused to die, that Rasputin had known his fate, that he had prepared for it, that something of him remained. Because some men leave behind stories, others leave behind questions, and Rasputin left behind something far worse. The unsettling possibility that belief itself can shield a human being from death. After Rasputin's death, the official story was sealed quickly. Too quickly. Records were finalized. Statements standardized. Witnesses encouraged to remember the same version of events. The empire was collapsing, and chaos made a convenient cover for forgetting details that did not fit. But some details refused to stay buried. One of the men involved in Rasputin's murder later confessed, in a private letter never meant for publication, that what frightened him most was not how hard Rasputin was to kill. It was how unsurprised Rasputin seemed. He wrote that at the dinner table, before the poison, before the gunshots, Rasputin looked at him with a tired expression, not fear, not suspicion, but resignation, as if he had already seen this moment. The man said Rasputin raised his glass, smiled faintly, and murmured words that no one present could later agree upon. Only that the tone was calm, almost gentle. There is a persistent rumor that Rasputin had been warning people for weeks. Not that he would die, but that after his death, things would accelerate. That time itself would seem to slip, that the world would begin moving too fast. Within a year, Russia collapsed into revolution. Within a decade, Europe tore itself apart in war. Within a generation, the old order of empires was gone. Historians argue causation, but even skeptics admit the timing is unsettling. What troubled investigators later was not Rasputin's influence over the royal family. It was his influence over individuals. Servants who met him once and never forgot him. Officials who opposed him publicly but avoided his gaze. Women who claimed he knew their thoughts before they spoke. One maid said he touched her wrist lightly and whispered that she feared drowning. She laughed it off. Years later, she survived a river accident that killed 2 others. She never spoke of Rasputin again. Then there were the journals. Fragments, mostly. Burned pages. Torn covers. Scattered references. Some claimed Rasputin kept no diary. Others insisted he kept several. One recovered fragment contains a sentence that has been debated endlessly. I am already elsewhere. The body follows later. Church authorities denied Rasputin had any theological knowledge beyond superstition. Yet several clerics privately admitted he spoke using language that echoed forbidden mystical traditions. Ideas about suffering as a gateway, about sin as proximity rather than corruption. One monk recalled Rasputin saying, in a low voice, that purity was useless without understanding what it rejected. The monk said the words felt wrong to hear, not blasphemous, but too honest. Some believed Rasputin belonged to a secret sect. Others thought he invented his beliefs. A few believed something far older had found a willing vessel. There is a little-known medical detail from Rasputin's autopsy that is rarely mentioned. His organs showed signs of extreme stress, but also unusual resilience. The examiner noted that certain injuries should have caused immediate unconsciousness. They did not. The examiner later admitted he felt as though Rasputin's body had been resisting shutdown, as if something did not want to let go. In the years that followed, strange things happened to those closest to Rasputin. Several died young. Others disappeared. A few claimed to be haunted by his voice. One woman testified that she would wake at night convinced someone was standing beside her bed, breathing slowly, patiently. When she turned on the lamp, nothing was there, but the sense of being observed lingered. The most disturbing claims surfaced decades later, long after witnesses had little to gain. Some said Rasputin appeared in dreams, not violent, not threatening, but disappointed. As if humanity had failed a test it did not know it was taking. Others claimed he warned them of coming suffering. Not specific events, just a direction. There is a final legend, almost never spoken aloud, preserved only in whispered retellings. It claims Rasputin knew the empire would fall, not because he caused it, but because he recognized something ancient repeating, that when systems rot internally, they do not collapse from enemies. They collapse from recognition. The moment people stop believing the structure is sacred. According to this legend, Rasputin did not try to save Russia. He tried to prepare it. And when that failed, he allowed himself to be removed. Because martyrs linger longer than advisors. Whether Rasputin was a mystic, a manipulator, a healer, or something darker remains unresolved. But one thing is certain. History has tried repeatedly to close the case. And each time it fails. Because Rasputin's story does not feel finished. Perhaps because some lives are not measured by their end, but by what begins moving once they are gone. There are documents historians refuse to catalog, not because they are proven false, but because they are impossible to contextualize. One such document surfaced briefly in the 1920s, passed quietly between émigré circles in Paris before disappearing again. It was said to be a copy of a letter Rasputin dictated shortly before his death, not to the Tsar, not to the church, but to no one in particular. The letter does not predict his murder. It acknowledges it. It speaks of his body as something temporary, a garment already loosening. It describes pain not as punishment, but as a signal, a door creaking open. And then it contains a line that no archivist could explain. They believe they will end me in water, but water remembers. What disturbed scholars was not the symbolism. It was the precision. Rasputin did not describe drowning as metaphor. He described it as process. Decades later, when divers re-examined the Neva River during unrelated construction, one of them surfaced shaking. He claimed that near the spot where Rasputin's body had been thrown, the water felt wrong. Not cold, not heavy, aware. He refused to dive there again. The darker traditions surrounding Rasputin come not from Russia alone, but from older currents that predate Christianity in the region, shamanic practices, ecstatic rites, beliefs that consciousness could be stretched beyond the body through suffering and ritual excess. Some anthropologists have quietly noted that Rasputin's behaviors match initiation patterns found in ancient cults: fasting followed by indulgence, isolation followed by exposure, humiliation followed by authority. Not madness, preparation. There is an unconfirmed account from a monastery archive that claims Rasputin once asked a monk a single question: "Do you believe the soul leaves the body all at once?" The monk said yes. Rasputin smiled and replied, softly, "Then you have never watched it hesitate." The night of his murder, witnesses later contradicted themselves in subtle but chilling ways. One said Rasputin screamed. Another insisted he laughed. A third claimed he said nothing at all, only stared upward, lips moving slightly, as though continuing a conversation that no one else could hear. One conspirator later confessed that after the final shot, when they were certain he was dead, Rasputin's fingers twitched. Not reflexively, deliberately. The most suppressed detail came from a servant who arrived afterward. She claimed the room felt occupied even after the body was gone, as if something had remained behind. Not a ghost, a presence without form. She said the air felt crowded. Years after the revolution, an Orthodox archivist found a marginal note scribbled into a damaged prayer book once owned by Rasputin. It was written in uneven ink, as though by candlelight. The note read, "I was permitted to look past the veil once. I will not be permitted again, but I will be remembered there." No context, no explanation. Then there are the dreams. Not just ordinary nightmares, but shared imagery reported by people who never met. A tall, bearded figure standing knee-deep in dark water. A low voice speaking without sound. A sensation of being forgiven and judged at the same time. Psychologists dismiss this as myth propagation, but even they admit something unusual. The dreams did not spread randomly. They clustered around moments of upheaval, war, collapse, political violence, as if the memory of Rasputin resurfaced when order began to rot. Some occult traditions claim Rasputin did not die unfinished. They claim he succeeded, that his body was destroyed, but the function he served was not. That he became a kind of echo, not haunting places, but moments. Moments when power grows decadent, when rulers confuse authority with destiny, when belief hollows out from the inside. In this interpretation, Rasputin was not a devil. He was a warning system, a living omen that appears when a structure has already begun to fail, and disappears once it is too late to save it. There is one final, deeply unsettling rumor. It claims that Rasputin predicted he would return, not as a man, not in flesh, but as an influence that would be recognized by its effect rather than its form. He supposedly said, "I will not come wearing my face. I will come wearing your certainty." Perhaps that is why his story refuses to rest, why every attempt to reduce him to fraud or fanatic feels incomplete, because something about Rasputin resists being closed, as if his role was never confined to his lifetime. History calls him a mad monk. Myth calls him a sorcerer. But the darker possibility is this. Rasputin was simply a man who looked too closely at what waits beneath belief, and learned how to stand there without blinking. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it just as I did. Remember to subscribe to the channel and click on the like button for more. I hope you learned something from this video. See you in our next video.